This is all about images, and since WordPress 5.3 has added 3 new images to the media library, I thought it'd be a good idea to take a look at that and how those changes can help manage your images and make your websites faster. And it actually took a little bit more information as far as pulling things together with this. And there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover on this. So here we go in the next slide. Okay, there we go. My name is Doug Ryder. You can contact me. There's my contact info. And just a little about me. I've been a recording engineer and mixer for more years than I care to admit in LA and New York, and also building software for music production companies. And now I've been building WordPress websites with hosting, support, and maintenance. And also just a little about the image in the upper right corner. I took this picture back about 12 years ago when I was in Thailand. This is in Bangkok. And it proved to be a really good image to work with because it's a very large image. It's like 6.5 megabytes, and it has like over 4,000 pixels wide. But it has nice blue sky with a lot of clouds up there. And it really works well for figuring out how far you can take an image and compress it to the point where it still looks good and is small. So that's one of the main areas that we're going to be working with here today. So ideas of what we're going to cover, mostly just starting off, just getting on the same page, some technical terms that keep on showing up, and I just want to be clear about what they mean and how they're going to proceed through the rest of the slide deck. Short history of the WordPress media library and its settings. It's coming up to 17 years old now. At the end of May, WordPress will be 17. So it's been a long slog for the media library. It hasn't seen a lot of love, since it started, but there's some big changes that have happened recently. And then we're going to be talking about what kind of images can be used and why you would use one image over the other and in what format. And then talking about where to get images, and we're talking about apps and online for editing images, and mostly spending some time on the optimizing of images. And this would be with plugins, photo editors, and online tools. And then toward the end, we're going to be talking about adaptive images, which is thinking about it as images as a service. These are images that stay on hosted platforms and are distributed to your users directly. Get a few plugins regarding media management, because what can you say, the media area has not seen much growth at all. And it's just one of those areas that is just difficult to manage, so we'll talk about some plugins that can help that. And at the end, or even sometimes during the middle, we're just going to be jumping out and showing image sizes and a few things on the browser end, and also in areas called code snippets, which we can actually see little pieces of code that can help and do really good things for your images for WordPress. So getting on the same page, things to know. So the difference between file size and image size. As you can see, the little arrows pointing over there on the little dialog there. The file size is something you all know. It's just basically how much data is getting stored up from the image onto your computer, your server. And the larger the file size, the more time it's going to take to get down into the browser, and the more time it's going to take for the browser to get that image. The image size is different, though. It's listed in pixels, and it is set to actually, that's used strictly by the device's display. And so that's called an image size. And we're going to ignore the DPI because it doesn't have anything to do with pixels on WordPress or any kind of image that goes up on a browser. The computer displays are the only things we really need to care about, and that's called pixels per inch. And just as a note, pretty much every device that you have has a different pixel per inch. I have an iMac and I have a MacBook Pro, and they're both around 220 pixels per inch, a little bit different. And my iPhone has 458 pixels per inch. And you'll see that different sizes are showing up all the time for the number of pixels per inch. And at some point, nobody has a 72 pixel per inch display anymore. They went away. many years ago, 10, 15 years ago. So this PPI, or pixel per inch, has to be kind of represented in some way. And I kind of stumbled on this area. This is from Mozilla, the developers for Firefox. And they came up with this idea of display pixel ratio. And it really rung a bell with me. I really liked what they were talking about. They say that basically older devices are considered to be DPR1, which means it's 1 pixel per 1 pixel. And when Retina displays started to show up almost 10 years ago, I think, that's called DPR2. It'd be 2 pixels for the one that started from DPR1. Right now, that's both of my computers are DPR2s, both Retina displays, and my phone is a DPR3, and there's even some phones that are out there now which have 4 times the number of pixels on the screen. So there's also a thing about image compression versus image quality. And it's a really interesting metric that can get a little confusing. WordPress uses quality percent in regard to what they do to an image when it goes up to the media library. And as they said, the actual thumbnail images, which are the images that are not the original image, get a quality change. It's not very aggressive at all. It's currently when it started, it was 90%. Affinity Photo, which is my app of choice, uses a quality percent also. And when you look at some of the Adobe products, they actually go from 0 to 12 as far as their quality setting. And quality setting for a lot of others are 0 to 100%. So plugins can change the file size of images, and they use a term called compression. And the compression sets up something like this. This is a picture of Affinity Photo, and you can see they have a quality slider. And my discoveries on some of these things is that I always, when I'm working with an image and I have to export it, I'm always going to take it at 100%. It'll increase the file size, but if you stay consistent with 100% all the way up until the time you need to do any compression work or you're going to change it, you only change it once and keep it at 100%, and it'll keep it nice and clean and simple. Sometimes I've seen things get passed back and forth between people, and they'll take the quality setting down to 85, and the next person will pass it back, and it'll be another 85, and the image sort of gets stepped on all along the way. And the idea is to keep it as pristine as you can possibly have it. And then when you get to the point to upload, then you can make some decisions about what to do with that. So, and this, you can see, Short Pixel is one of the plugins that I use for compressing images. And they said reduced by 96%, and the WordPress uses the quality of 90% at this time. And so this is lossy. In other words, they took this image and they compressed it heavily. Let's say if the image was about 1,000 kilobytes, this would be down, this compression would take it down to about 40 kilobytes. There's a lot of compressing on that. So that's the opposite end. The numbers look kind of the same, but it means very different things. And this is like taking the file size down to a fairly low size. And let's see. And so I can take any questions that there are at this point on what we just went over a little bit. I can show you also the DPR settings in Firefox and how that works, if that's something that's of interest at this time.
Doug Noyle has a question.
Okay.
Hey guys,
Hi.
good to see everybody. Miss y'all. So Doug Ryder, can you elaborate a little bit about the difference between Short Pixel and the other in its compression that you're using?
Well, I use Short Pixel. The other compression, it's actually not, it's a quality change. I was using the WordPress quality change. So WordPress, you'll see this in the deck essentially, but when you upload an image to the WordPress media library, it doesn't touch the original image. It doesn't do anything. It just puts it there, in the file folders that it's belonging. The thumbnails, which are the thumbnail, the medium size and the large size images, they actually get the quality change, and they're getting resized at the same time. So it's not very aggressive, and people wanted it that way. And that'll show up here in the short history. You can see the progression of how they've dealt with these things. But Short Pixel does a different thing very much so. And again, that'll come toward the end, how it approaches its compression. It's a very aggressive compressor as far as images go. And it's the one that I like because it still does a very good job of keeping the images pretty good. And so I hope that answers that.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So Marianne has a question she wrote in the chat. When using Photoshop, if I export for web and use the high setting, is that the same as quality at 100%?
No, you'd have to take the slider in there and push it all the way to the max. But again, I'm going to be talking about that, and it's not necessarily the best way to do it. It's been my experience. I notice I take the quality all the way up to the top all the time for all the images that I do. And I keep it that way, and I upload the image with that 100% quality, and then I let Short Pixel handle the compression. Some people just want to let WordPress handle the compression, and that's also a good thing. But those file sizes are not; they're a little bit on the heavy side for me. The file sizes that WordPress does, and I'd like a fast site. I love images, and so I just want to see the pages load quickly. But there's a good, nice discussion, Marianne, on that. When we get to that point, and I'll just go over when you should compress an image, or if you should compress an image at all, before you upload it to the library. So again, if we can, we'll just jump into this short little history.
Sorry, we got a couple more questions.
Okay.
So Sam Shogren is next.
Yeah, hi. My question is, if you're using an application like Lightroom, which I use,
Right.
why not export out of that a file that's specific to uploading for the web? So if you have a big image, why not configure your exporting features for Lightroom so that it does that compression in that program versus uploading into WordPress and then using an app to do that?
Because if you, Sam, if you take an image and you put some kind of quality filter on it, where you're reducing the size of the image, you're compressing that image, and then you take it and you upload it to the WordPress, media library, WordPress is also going to compress that image. Not the full size image, but it's going to compress all the thumbnail images, and the thumbnail images are the smaller images that come with it. So it's like it's getting compressed twice. And it's not necessarily the best thing. Just a FYI, I've been in the audio business for a long, long time and working with big files and things like that. And we always had this mantra that you keep it in the same process all the way through to the very final end. You don't make it smaller sizes. You don't do any of that. You keep it in the big size. And when you need to make a big drastic change in how it's getting processed, you make the change once. And so I'll show, I'm going to have an example of how that kind of works. When you compress an image and then you upload it to the media library and let WordPress compress it again. Okay. I hope.
Yeah, I'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's interesting. I didn't know it either until I just like, hey, what happened there? Okay. We move on, Doug, or? Okay, I'll just move on.
Hang on, sorry.
Yeah.
So Dottie asked, what is saving a progressive image in Photoshop? And then also just before you go on, can I just mention if people could raise their hands in participants instead of doing chat or messaging me privately, it's a little easier for me to see who's next.
Yeah, I know it used to be a thing when, web page test, users always wanted to have you do progressive images, which is a way of interlacing the image, and they go past one line to the other. And so it is trying to be so it'd be like an image has a bunch of rows, and then they would start at the top again and go to other rows like this. And so the image would just seem to kind of grow. And visually, some people liked it, and visually, some people didn't. So it's just a change of the way that the image actually gets displayed, whether it just starts from the top, goes all the way down to the bottom, or it starts from the top, but then goes every other step to the bottom, and then it goes back to the top and fills in the gaps from the top and goes down the same steps. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that right, but that's the difference between progressive and just the standard type of progression. I don't use the progressive images, but you know, you can. But anyway, I know it's a thing in Photoshop they had. I don't personally use Photoshop anymore, but I do remember it. So. Doug, anything else, or?
I think we're good.
Okay.
So Sam, did you have another question, or you still have your hand raised? Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think we're good.
Okay. So this is a very short history, starting from 2003, which is when WordPress started. I think it was in May 27th. So as I said, coming up to the 17th anniversary. So the idea about what happens when you upload an image, the original uploaded image is not changed. It stays. And what I did was I did a very bad thing, and I uploaded that temple at 6.5 megabytes, 4,300 pixels wide. And it stays the same. It just doesn't get touched. It just leaves it there. These other images here, these are the thumbnail images, and you can see them. They've been in the media settings. And in fact, these media setting numbers haven't changed as far as I know since the beginning, which is kind of amazing to me, since the way, you know, displays have changed over the last 10, 15 years. So the original image isn't changed, but WordPress resizes all the thumbnail images and sets the quality at 90%. Which was not very aggressive. So it just brought it down a little bit in the amount of quality that they changed it with. One of the things that is interesting here, and when you look at the media settings, is that everything is the same. Like you've seen this medium size 300 and the height is 300. And as I said, this hasn't changed in forever. This is still the defaults. And one of the things you could change if you wanted to is you could change the max height to 0. And what that would do is it would, WordPress would ignore the height as a factor in how this has changed. So the width would always be the same, like in the medium size. If you have a landscape style image aspect ratio that is wider than taller, and say the width would be 300 and the height would be 200. That would be a standard thing. But if you had a portrait style image, which is taller than wider, that would force it to the height. So it would be 300 on the height and the width would be 200. And that to me was always this kind of weird thing, because the width is more important than the height of an image when you have it. And you want to be able to grid things along the way so that things don't, your 200 wide image looks a little bit different than a 300 wide image when you're using a medium image in a blog post and that sort of thing. These sizes that they have here were designed, as I said, back in 2003. And now we have double display sizes. We have bigger, phones that look on these things. And so what I'm suggesting is that these can be changed. But I see a lot of people that don't. So. But that's the standard, that's the way it was back in, all the way up to about 2015 was the first major change that happened in the media library. When you think about it, that was, just 5 years ago. So 4.4 in December 2015, WordPress added an extra image. Kind of snuck it in. Nobody seemed to know much about it, but it was a 768 pixel wide image. And they also added something called source set, which was designed to introduce or to inform the browser what other size images are available for this particular image. As you can see, I'm just going to hover the mouse over. Like the image that I had in here was 300 by 300. It's a square image. But it actually is going to take a look and say, if this is a you know, if this is a retina image, double the pixel, we're going to have to double that size to make it look good. So it would look through and find an image that was double the size and not too much more, which is the 768. There was no 600 image, but it would use this one for the retina displays. And this is where you get that 2 pixel per 1 pixel, a DPR2. So on mine, if I looked at it on mine, and even though somebody set it as a 300 pixel wide image, mine would be 768. And I assume pretty much everybody here that's watching this has a computer that's going to do the same thing. So the source set was actually a great idea. So it could actually say to the browser, hey, we got a bigger image if you need one. So that was December. And then like 6 months later, in 2016, WordPress changed the quality of how it handled the images from 90 to 82, which is where it is today. And I think people went kind of apoplectic. They just thought that this was horrible and that your WordPress was destroying their images. This is, again, a quality change, which is a little bit subjective when you think about it, and it would reduce the file size of the image. And again, this was only applied to the thumbnails. Those are the 3 images that were described in there. Now 4 images, so you have to include the 768 image. So with this, it wound up, people complained vigorously about this. But WordPress had done a lot of research on this, and they've actually found that not just the majority, but the vast majority of people really couldn't see the difference between 90% and 82%. So they said, let's go with it. And I think it was a good idea because it did bring the file sizes down for those thumbnail images. So the big one that started this snowball for me was the change that happened just back in November in WordPress 5.3. They added 2 images and actually a third one, but the 2 images were the 1536 and the 2048 image, these top 2 that you see here. They doubled the existing 768 and 1024. And these were basically set up to be that retina size image. So if somebody put in a 1024 image, they would actually had a retina display, they would get this one instead. Doubled up the size because a retina is a 2 times pixel density than over a standard image. But the interesting thing, the biggest thing that they changed was they added this 2,560 pixel image, and they called it the scaled image. And this is now the new full size image. So interestingly enough, if you pick the full size image, instead of getting some crazy 6 megabyte file, and I know that's not what you should do, but I'm just doing this to show a point here. The new full size image is now this one. It's called scaled. And you can see as part of the thumbnail package, all of these are considered to be thumbnails of the original size image because their sizes have been changed. And so this is now, I think, a great thing because it prevents people like doing a dumb thing of uploading a 6 megabyte file and having it show up on the website. So this is considerably different. It's like 900 kilobytes. And again, we're still using WordPress's 82% quality and kind of generating these file sizes that you see. So that was, really an interesting thing. And then also one other little thing with this. So what happens, let's say, when you upload an image that is not that big, and the scaled image isn't going to be able to cover it because this wants to be 2,560 pixels wide. So I uploaded a 400 pixel image, and you can see that it only generates 2 thumbnails, the ones that are lower. So it never generates an image that is bigger than what the image is that you set. So in other words, you don't see the 768, you don't see the 1024 image in here because it's not going to upscale this. And this was a 400 pixel wide image that I uploaded. So, and that's kind of this little sense of short history. It's just a good idea to kind of figure out what has been going on. And to be honest with you, I think this idea of the the full size, the new full size image and the scaled image is a great idea because it just prevents people from uploading. Doesn't prevent them from uploading, but it prevents them from using that original image. In fact, you can't even get at it. If you're in Gutenberg and you're adding an image, you don't even see that. You see this one, and they call it the scaled image. So I'm going to jump in another section. So the short history, if there's any questions, we can pile them in now.
Doug Noyle's got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great info. I assume Short Pixel has already been updated to handle the extra sizes and add them accordingly.
Yeah, if an extra size shows up by default, Short Pixel is going to deal with it. And just to be honest too, this is just what WordPress does. You can have a theme that adds its own images. You can have a plugin that adds its own images in there too, different sizes. I've seen one plugin that added 10 different image sizes in there for whatever reason, I don't know. So if you open up, the FTP site and take a look at what you have in there, sometimes you say, wait a minute, I'm not just seeing these image sizes, I'm seeing way, way more. So again, I'm just relating to what WordPress does at this point. And Short Pixel works differently, and now that comes about 10 slides back, so forward. And it's a very interesting, it's a different process with plugin, and it's not unique to Short Pixel. There's all the plugins that you can use to actually compress images with work in a similar fashion too. It's just that they have different criteria for how much compression they use. But again, the interesting thing is that this 768 image, this 1536, this 2048, if you went into Gutenberg and you wanted to add an image, you could add the image, and the only images that are going to be available for you to select are the thumbnail, the medium, the large image, and the scaled image, which is actually now called full size. So these are basically not there for usage, they're there for displaying double-sized images for retina displays. Now, I kind of agree that these things don't need to be there, but I think this is a good size that can be used in the thing. And so I do have a little code snippet that will let you use that, what they call medium large image there, the 768, because sometimes it's useful. But that's kind of what the media library has been doing. Okay.
And will you cover later on when you use Imagify versus Short Pixel?
Yep. I've used them both. I have clients that use them both too. So they're very similar. They just different style of compression. Let's put it that way. So.
All right. Anil's got a question.
So Doug, how will that affect the speed? Because this you're mentioning is not pre-configured. It does in real time, right?
These images, because WordPress uses this, there's a particular application that runs on all Linux servers, which basically host 90% of the world web out there. It's called Image Magic, and it is a command line compression tool, and very capable, but very, very fast since it works on the server and the command line. WordPress uses that. They actually feed specific criteria to it and say that these are the image sizes based on what you have put in, back in that media setting area. He said, I have a 300 by 300, so it knows it has to resize the image to that, and then it has to put a quality filter in, which is now at 82%. So, and it happens very quick. I mean, these things don't take much time at all to actually compress.
I see. So you're suggesting that there's no point me selecting in there. WordPress is basically, you just upload the full image and
yeah. Well, again, now, yeah, you can upload a large image and one that hasn't, as I said, been stepped on and done and no compression to it, and let WordPress itself just do the handling, the compression of all these 7 images here. And that's kind of what that does. You know, you can't get to this large image, you know, at least that I know of, and there's no easy way. I can add these into Google Browser so they can pick one of these images here. But this one just is kind of hidden. I think they left it in there for protection, because if they didn't, people would just have gone bonkers trying to figure out why their large image isn't, you know, on their SFTP site, or in their, you know, if they go into cPanel and they look at the file manager. It doesn't get used, let's put it that way. But again, the interesting thing is this happens very fast. You know, they're very, you know, it happens within seconds. It's a very fast process for this to happen. I think they're pretty good about doing it at 82%. It's a very conservative amount of compression. And I shouldn't say necessarily compression, they're changing the quality. You know, they're removing things that they feel they can remove, because this is one of the things that is a big takeaway for me when I was starting to do this. Was I would sit there and I would compare, let's say, one of these compressed images against this big image. And I would say, you know, I can see a difference. You know, I can see the leaves over there. They look a little more pixelated around the edges against that blue sky. This looks, you know, this big image looks bitter. But when you compare them side by side and look at them on your screen, but people don't do that. They're never going to see that large image. They're only going to see the image that you present to them. And when you take that large image away and all they see is one of these thumbnail images, and compared to it looks really good. And so that's all they care about. So some people that put it up and they want their big, beautiful image to be their big, beautiful image, you know, the people that go to your site aren't going to see it.
True,
So,
true. I think that's what I see with this Google app called Squash dot app.
okay.
And it allows you to roll the slide and compare, and people always freak out. They say, oh, I can tell the difference.
Right.
But there you're comparing the two. In reality, you're only seeing
Right.
one at a time.
They're only seeing one. Yeah, they're only seeing the one that you give them. Yeah, I have that in the list of one of the tools. It's a great tool that Google has there, as far as it can optimize, and it can also resize images too, which you don't really see in some of those big bulk optimizers. So, okay. Doug, anything else, or can we?
I don't see anyone else with questions.
Okay, so next part, we're just going to talk about image types, and we're going to start with JPEG. We got 5 to kind of go through. We'll go through this pretty quickly about why you would use one over the other and what's the capabilities of each one of these image types. And this last one down back here is a WebP, which is a Google property. It's an interesting thing to be able to know. It's not as common yet, but it is getting more common as we go. So JPEG, this is, you know, been around since the early 90s. It's lossy compression for photos. And it does, the idea is that these huge, huge files that would come in, you know, through some of these big scientific companies, you know, like hundreds of megabytes, they needed it way back in the day when storage was expensive, to resize these images and recompress these images so they could actually handle it. And that's where the Joint Photographic Experts Group came in. It is lossy compression, and it's based on a pixel-based format. So if you made the image bigger, you would get that kind of, you know, what do you call furry edges, because you're actually increasing the size of the image. And so the pixel, each pixel would get a little bit bigger. One nice thing, just basically, if the image comes out of a camera, it's 99% of the time, it should just be a JPEG. That's what it's designed for. You know, the image coming from a camera is either coming out in a RAW format or it's coming out in a JPEG format. And the idea is to keep it in the JPEG format type. So, and next one up for bat is, I call it PNG because it's easier to say than PNG, but it works the same. This is designed, it came in a little later than what the JPEGs were, but it's recommended for graphics. It's lossless compression. It's kind of an odd way to say it, but that doesn't lose any quality when they do compress the file size. And it can also handle transparency. So I don't have an example of that here, but that would be like if they just took a chunk out of here and let whatever black come into the background of the image. It is great for graphics. As you can see, this is a graphic. It didn't come out of a camera, so this is the best image type for this. The standard that is used is PNG 24, which is the same number of colors, usually 16 million colors that JPEG has. You can actually compress an image if it doesn't have that many colors down to a PNG 8, which only allows 256 colors, but the 256 colors you can actually prescribe. This is blues, greens, and yellows. So you can peel away the reds, you can peel away anything else. So there's not a color that appears on it. So they can actually make the file size a little smaller. And the PNG 32 handles the 8 bits of transparency that's required for each portion of that program. So these file sizes can get pretty big because they're lossless compression, and it is still pixel based. So I see a lot of people put images in and just make an image of this instead of, and I just think I'm going to show you the little thing that happens when you do that. So JPEG or a PNG file. So I say just use the correct image type. So I had a file that was 2048 by 1360. This one you see here. This is using the standard 82% in WordPress, and it takes this size down to 652 kilobytes. On a PNG file, if you convert it to a PNG file, it's lossless, and its file size is 4,700 kilobytes. It's like 7 times the size of the JPEG for virtually no benefit. I've actually found that the PNG files have a tendency to harshen up the edges. Some people may like that, but it looks a little hard around the edges. But just the fact that it's 7 times the size of a standard, lossy JPEG is one reason alone not to use it. It's, they're very large. As I said, the images look pretty much the same, but for the size difference, you want to go with JPEG because it came out of the camera, but it's also much smaller. Also, you could use the correct image type, JPEG versus PNG, for a graphic. You just knock this thing together really quick. This is a JPEG on the left side. Some words, black background, white background with a line, and this is JPEG at 82%, the current one for quality size, and this file size is 51K. The PNG file is 52K, virtually the same, but the big difference here is that if you actually looked at these side by side and actually looked at it, the text would be really crisp on the PNG, which is what you want. JPEG would have a little bit of hard problems. You're deciphering this edge from the white to black. And this line appears really crisp, where this line has a little bit of fuzz to it. And also because it has so few colors, if you turned it into a PNG 8, 256 colors, you could almost knock it back in half the size. So this is the perfect reason for using a graphic for a PNG file. So you wouldn't want to put this necessarily in a JPEG because it does look worse than the PNG file. I'm sorry, you can't really see it, just looking at it over the TV, but if you do, you would say like, yes, the PNG file always 100%. So the GIF, everybody's favorite because it was the first one that actually showed up in not necessarily in WordPress, but basically on the web. It was from the late 80s. And the interesting thing about the GIF is, you can pronounce it as you want, but that was the most interesting thing about it is the pronunciation and which way you want to whirl with that. It does support animation and transparency, and it was only added to 256 colors. They've modified that a little bit lately, but basically it's designed for very simple images with, as you can see, the cat has a, animation transparency, and this is basically a video turned into a GIF. They stutter those images. Don't see it as much anymore, but it's always a fun it is an image that people do still use. This used to be the default for pretty much all logos, this type of image, going back in the day. So the next one is one of my favorites, and it's called an SVG. It's a scalable vector graphics, and the big difference here is that it's not a pixel-based image. It's based on vectors. So essentially these images just has no pixels. It just has lines and curves with dots in them that move these lines and curves around. As you can see down here, this is the little image that started with. This is the image that I had. And I basically blew this up 10 to 12 times, and you can see that there is no pixelation at all around the image, and it scales, and it stays the same size. So this actual size of this image is 6 kilobits, this guy. And so when you scale it up, maybe take up a whole page, it's still going to be 8 kilobits, very, very tiny. And it's great for graphics and perfect for logos as far as I'm concerned. It supports animation and transparencies. And the nice thing they're starting to see is that PNGs are starting to kind of fade away because SVGs are becoming more popular to be used within the media library. And you can actually take a ping and convert it into an SVG with the right tool. That would be with Adobe Illustrator, the Affinity products that I use. They have Affinity Designer, can do that also. The file sizes are similar, but the fact is that with the SVG, you can scale it bigger. I mean, I know when you get a theme and they ask for 2 images for the logo, the regular size image and then the retina size image, which is twice as big. Well, with this, you just give them 1 image and the SVG will scale up as far as you can take it. Biggest issue, there's no direct way to upload this to the media library because it's not pixels, it's actually code. And WordPress is very adamant about that. You can't upload this because that would be like uploading a PHP file. They won't allow that either into the media library. The fact that it's code is an issue, but there's plugins that can sanitize the upload, and they're actually available in the WordPress repository to use. So you just get this plugin. It's called, the one that I use is Safe SVG, and you can upload as many SVGs as you want. It's actually going to check the code to make sure there's nothing bad inside that would hurt the website that you have. This is a great tool, and I'm seeing this more and more, especially you can take a ping file that somebody else did as their logo and convert it to an SVG. It's really great at doing that sort of thing. So we got one last image, and that's going to be the WebP. This is what's called as a next-gen format. It's for web only, and Google is the current developer. They purchased a company that was working with this file format, and Google liked it. Google claims that it's 25% reduction in file size with the same quality. Not 100% sure on that, I'm not sold on that. But the one thing that this file type does is it has both lossless and lossy compression. It supports transparency and animation. So it's a one-type file that can replace JPEG, PNGs, and GIFs, which is really good. It's a pixel-based format. Big problem is Safari and iOS, or Apple doesn't support it. So what do? All the compression plugins that I know of, the Short Pixel does this, Imagify does this, and I think the other one, EWW, and even Smush does this if you're using their compression tools. If you upload a JPEG, they can also create WebP images from the JPEG. You get twice the number of images in there in your media library, and it will serve the WebP image to Chrome. Even now Microsoft Edge uses it, and it'll serve it to Firefox. And if you go back to Safari, or if you're on your iPhone, it'll serve the JPEG, which is a pretty cool idea. To be honest with you, I don't know if Apple's ever going to get on board. Believe me, we don't know. Google will have to come up with a lot of money, I think, to make that work. So anyway, it's an interesting image. As I said, I haven't seen a big reduction in file size compared to some of the other compression tools that I've seen. In fact, I've seen them get a little larger sometimes than an equivalent JPEG size. But the fact that it can supplant, all the other types of main raster style and pixel style images is a pretty cool thing. So that's a good break here as far as image types. If you have any other questions on this. Nothing? Okay. Doug, I haven't heard from you. You okay? Or
Oh, no, I just didn't see anybody raise their hand.
okay. So we'll show how these WebP images get created because they can't. You shouldn't just create them on their own because you're leaving out. Safari is worldwide. You're talking about over 20% of the market is using either an iPhone or a Safari browser, and in the U.S. that is even a bigger percentage. You know, it's upwards like 40% using it. So that's the only issue that they have with it. Otherwise, it's a pretty cool little image type. So I said, so where do you get images? Well, you can start with a camera. Pretty much everybody is walking around with a camera. And you can take a picture. Very easy to do. You know, it's that thing that makes phone calls. You don't worry about it because it's now considered to be a camera that makes phone calls. And where do you get images? And I would just say this is a little bit of a area that some people are uncomfortable taking pictures. It sometimes takes a lot of practice to get them right as you start to find things that are you like to photograph and that you would like to use on your website or a client's website. So if you're not the best photographer in the world, that could be okay. But the fact is that your phone can make a very good quality image. And that's important for starting with a good quality image. And if you can't take a picture, hire a photographer. I've had a couple of clients do this where they had hired a photographer to do headshots. They did shots in the office and a few outside shots at all, and it worked great. The photographer is going to do a great job because they're professionals. They're going to actually be able to present a really big high-res image, which is always great for getting into the website and, in a compressed format. The only things that we want to check is just as maybe hiring a photographer, get the images that you want and make sure the deliverables are stated in the contract. There's always a contract associated with working with a photographer, unless it's your nephew. That would be a different thing. But get the ownership of the images to use wherever you want them to be used, and get the high resolution images. Those are the big takeaways that you might want to take with this. And so there's also, you can get images from stock photos. I could have filled up 2 or 3 pages of this stuff with just links to images where you can get images for free or even paid online. But these are the ones that kind of are common. The first 3 are Unsplash, Pixabay, and Pexels. They're free services. You can sign up and actually get a slightly larger image than normal. They do compress images. You remember the photo that I had taken, the temple photo in Bangkok? It's a 6.5 meg image, and it's like 4,300 pixels wide. It's a big image. I uploaded it to all 3 of these, and they kept the image size, the 4,000 pixel wide, but they actually made the file size smaller. It went from 6.5 meg down to 2 meg. So and I understand why they would do that. They're storing a lot of images and they want to give you a good picture, but they can't give you the full size picture. And so this is what you download from them has been an image that has what I call been stepped on. So they have actually done some compression on it already. And again, we know that path goes down into getting compressed later on and maybe another time at some other point. So it's just something to be aware of. There's some museums out there that do photograph their artwork and their artifacts that they have. This one I just love this one in New Zealand, not New Zealand, sorry, in the Netherlands. It's Rick's Museum, and they specialize in Renaissance art, and they take high resolution images of all the artwork there, and you can download them. Which is great. You create an account and don't know necessarily how to use them, but the images look fabulous. And Getty Images and Shutterstock. Yes, they're expensive, but they're expensive for a reason, because the big thing is that they have licensing for these images. And sometimes businesses want to make sure that they have the licensing and the rights for the images, as opposed to putting up some image and getting punished for it. later on by getting a bill in the mail saying, hey, this is a copyrighted image from us. Getty is notorious for this. They will find your image that you use on your website and they'll come and send you a nice invoice. But so businesses like it because they know they're protected. They know that the images that they use from Getty, these are stock images and Shutterstock, have been cleared, and the licensing is owned by the company, and you have the rights to use it in your manner. The Noun project and Undraw are icons, not necessarily photos, but they're icons, and so they represent as images, and they're really great icons. I pay for, this is $40 a year. And you can download these icons and they come in SVG format, which I love. And this Undraw has free icons too, that you can download too. I'm just going to click on one like the Noun project. I'm just going to jump out in here and you can see these are really, really nice images, and you can search for stars, let's say. And there are thousands of them. And they're all in SVG, PNGs if you want, but the SVG is crazy. So, and then you could colorize these and move them. I could scroll for days on these things. They're really, really good on that regard. And Undraw, I'll just jump out real quick on this. These are for free. She makes these for free that people can use. They can change the color. There's not a lot of images here, but they can be very useful, for your sites. And again, all SVGs and really, really, really good quality. So we can jump back to the deck. Font also.
Sorry to interrupt with a couple things. So earlier, Doug Noyle asked if you're using WebP.
I am on a couple of sites. I'm mostly using it for experimental purposes, just to see how it works and how it plays. I've been finding that the compression on Short Pixel on the JPEGs is actually, the file sizes are less than the WebP compared to what they say. They may be different for different compression tools. But, it's a Google property, and, we sometimes have a tendency to kind of lean toward Google to give them some props and help them out. They might like it better if you have WebP images. There are some benefits to it. Don't be alarmed, but it's not really in the sense of the image size or the compression. That's the benefit for it. So, but Short Pixel can do it. Imagify can do it. EWW has a WebP component that can do it. Can make those images, and so does Smush, and a number of others are doing it now. And they're not adding any additional cost to do it too, which is kind of nice.
Okay. Also, Fada asked if those are all SVG icons. I think that he was referring to the Noun project, maybe?
Yes, if you pay for it, they're SVG icons. I think if you do it for free, they're PNG in images. They're still good quality, but they're PNG files. I believe that's the case. It's like $40 a year, so I use them pretty much on, well, I would say maybe at least half the projects I do. And they're really great because they're just not your standard font awesome icon, which can become bundled with themes and things. And these are the ones that get used for social media icons, the telephone icon, the envelope icon. But it's a heavy price to pay because you're paying for the whole. You're not paying for it, but you're getting the whole package to actually pick out 2 or 3 images for it. But the Noun project is a wonderful tool, and they actually have an app that you can download, and you can do all your searching through the app on there. So great tool. So is Undraw too. So, yeah.
Sorry, we got some more.
Okay.
So Maria asked what plugin you're using. I'm not sure at what point she was referring to that.
Yeah, a plugin for compression, for doing compressing of images, or
for WebP.
Display. Oh, for WebP. Yeah, there is a way you can upload a WebP image, but again, the problem is that there's no JPEG equivalent for it for people on Safari and on iPhones. So, as I said, Short Pixel can generate a WebP Imagify can generate a WebP, EWWW, Smush it, and I'm sure there's others in there too that can do the same thing to generate. It's a checkbox. You just tick the box, you change a couple settings. I can show you what Short Pixel does in regard to the WebP. And as I said, it's browser specific. If you come on a Google, if you come in with Chrome, and you're going to get the WebP image. If you come into Safari, you're going to get the JPEG. So it makes sure that there's a fallback no matter what happens. Firefox is supporting it. They came in and supported WebP, I think, back in the fall. And Microsoft, of course, is supporting it because they're using the Chromium rendering engine that Google does. They signed on board with that, which is great, I think. But size-wise, it's still up to debate, okay, as far as I'm concerned. But there's no harm in doing it at this point. So 2 other little images here.
So sorry, we got another question.
Okay.
All right, Mike Noter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And it's about the licensing. And you said that people like to the bigger businesses like to use the 2 paid versions. Well, my question is what is the risk that you're going to use one of the free services and then that turn around? They say it's free, you use it. Is there liability there?
It's a good question because it has happened. That first one you say Unsplash, somebody uploaded an image that they did not have the copyright for. Somebody else downloaded that image and put it on their website. One of the big companies, I don't know, what could have been Getty or Shutterstock, I don't know, found that this was being used and they sent them a bill. And of course, the person that downloaded it said like, hey, you're Creative Commons 0. You should be able to download this. And they said, well, whoops, it happened. They took no responsibility for it. I don't know how that case came out in the end, but it's just something to be aware of. And I think that, I use Unsplash, and I use Pixabay and Pexels, and they're all the same approach. They are trusting the person that's uploading an image that they have the copyright and they're able to provide this under the Creative Commons 0 licensing.
So theoretically, there's fall through liability here, even though they.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of Lottie. I just want to talk about let me do it at Google Images, and you really talk about liability. That's why I have free with a big question mark on it. Yeah, it is. And so, Getty Images, Shutterstock, any of the paid services, they have the licensing for those images to be used, and you're paying for that. You're not necessarily paying for the images, you're paying for the protection of using those images as a business. And I can see the reason for people doing that. It can be $50 a month. It could be even more, depending on how many images you use.
So Marianne has a question about WebP.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question as well because I use Short Pixel.
Mm-hmm.
You turn me on to Short Pixel. I use it on not every site, but enough of them. And there's always this WebP images on Google, and I'm not really sure what that means. So, in settings of Short Pixel.
Yes, that's for you. There's on the advanced tab, it is a checkbox. Did you say, yes, I want you, when you compress the JPEG, I want you to also make the WebP images. Okay. And then the one thing that's different and unique, the WebP images don't show up without a little bit of work on the WordPress website. You have to have a plugin that kind of configured, or you have to do some coding to make the WebP images show up. And Short Pixel kind of includes that coding so that the WebP image does show up. I found that, when let's say I'm using Short Pixel and I'm making WebP images, when I disable Short Pixel, the WebP images don't show, just the JPEGs if I go to Chrome or Firefox, which is kind of interesting because, in other words, they're actually using some extra code in there to actually display the WebP images. So it's not like JPEG just shows up always, but so that's one of the things that you see. I can go look. We can take a look at the settings and what to do on the WebP images, at some point. But
great. That I'd like that.
Okay.
Let's look at those settings on that.
Yeah. So one of the other things we have is Lottie files. Again, this is icons.
Sorry to keep
Okay,
interrupting. We got another question
Okay.
from Doug Noyle.
Hey, so the short pixel has the two products. They have the image optimizer versus the
Adaptive images.
they have the real-time serving. So when you say that they are offering WebP and they have code that serves the WebP when needed, which product are you referring to?
Both. You can't run. I'm running 3 sites with the short pixel adaptive images. It's best not to run both plugins at the same time. You pick your choice. You know, whether you want them to serve the images to your users, or whether you want to serve the images to your users from your website. But you can. It's the same checkbox. They have a WebP checkbox on the adaptive images area, so you can say yes, make some WebP images for me too. I'll show you that. Yeah.
So the non-adaptive product where you're just one-time image, getting a one-time optimization of an image, and they give you a WebP, they give you code that you're going to put into your.
The short pixel has the code to display it. So if you keep that, either one of those plugins active, they will. If there is a WebP image and the browser can support it, they'll make sure it gets displayed.
Even if you don't have the adaptive product.
Correct. Even on short pixel, image optimizer, I think it is. You have the WebP. You check the box. Keep it checked. It'll make the WebP images for anything you upload, and then it'll display it. But again, if you deactivate short pixel, of course, that capability of displaying the products, it's not going to happen.
Okay. Cool.
And there's a plugin specifically for using WebP images, but I don't know why you would just upload. I haven't figured that one out yet, but it makes sense for all these, image compressing tools to actually do this. I think Google's really pushing for this to get out over the web entirely, which is great. So anything else here?
I think we're good.
Okay, just a quick thing on Lottie files, which is kind of an interesting thing. These are animation SVGs, and they're fun little images, and they are interesting in how they can get processed, but you can download some, you can pay for, some are free, but they come in, there's JavaScript involved, or there is Adobe After Effects that are involved in making these images. So you have to have a plugin to display it on a website. And there's anything that says, if you search for anything Lottie, Lottie, you'll find one of the 3 that works for it. But they're interesting. And it's a little community here for doing these kind of very interesting images. They're just animated, which is cool. So let me just jump back. I do want to check in on the Google. So images.google.com. So I'm going to Google, and I'm in Google Images right now, and I'm going to type in red roses.
Sorry, just before you go on to that,
right.
Fada asked about the Lottie files. Does the extra JS, etc., cause slowness in loading?
It could. I haven't used them enough to notice what they are doing, because there is activity, there is code. It's not that much. When I looked at the code, I said there's not a lot there. So I can't imagine it taking a lot. But some of them use JavaScript, some of them use a special kind of Adobe After Effects, which is a specific plugin to actually display it. I think maybe that one would even have more code. But they just don't, you can't just get an image, put it into an image, bucket, and then have it display without doing something extra on the side. So you also have this extra plugin involved. But worth a look. Are you tired of seeing the red images, the red roses? Anything else, Doug?
I don't see any other questions.
Okay, great. So we're here at images.google.com, and you say, oh, look at this, and oh, I think I'm just going to go ahead and download this image, and you take a look at it, and you say, yes, this looks great. Pretty much on every image you see it over here, images may be subject to copyright, which basically means that they're not really sure on this image or any of the images that say that. And there is a way to kind of have assurances of what's going on. If you go to the tools menu here and look at usage rights under Google and select label for reuse with modifications, it means you can do the most things with it if you want. They have label for non-commercial use, but even if you want to put them on a picture on something and have it displayed. So you select this, and of course you get a lot fewer images, and pretty much most of them, or all of them, show up from the stock images. You know, here's Pexels. Here is commons.wikimedia.org, Pixabay. So these are the images that they have that Google feels that you can actually use. My feeling is that it's almost a why bother? Why not just go directly to Unsplash, directly to Pixabay or Pexels, and just do the search like you would do it here? And so I'd be very hesitant to be picking any image that you see unless you actually filter for this. Because from what I know, Getty Images and even some of the publishing industries that manage photographers, what they'll do is called a reverse image search in Google. So you see this little camera here, and I'm going to click the camera, and it's going to say, well, upload an image. We're going to search by image. And I'm going to go grab one, which hopefully is there. Yes, this is yellow one, yellow rose, okay? It's uploading an image. And it's saying, okay, do you want to see other sizes with this image? And what they would do is they'd come in here and say, well, who's using this image? And they would look at the different site to see this image, which may be a copyrighted image that they own. You know, they're uploading their own image that they know they have the copyright for, and they're seeing if there's any others on the web. And again, they'll look and say, oh, let's send this person a bill, let's send this person a bill, that sort of thing. And it's actually a great tool, you know, don't get me wrong. I think it's a great tool for just if you have an image that's small and you say, gee, is there another image that would be okay that I can use? You can see if there's other extra images for it. So those are the two things, reverse image search with the camera and just making sure the usage rights are set in the way that makes sense to you. I mean, I don't use Google Images very much for anything because I just use these three primarily. And I use a lot of the icons as much as I can, which I love icons like that. Okay, so this is a good break here. The next step is we're talking a little bit about image editors, but any other questions, or we just want to jump right into the next one? Okay, I take no answer as an answer. And so here we go. So image editors, and this is apps and online editors that you can use, because when you get an image, it doesn't mean that, yeah, you're just going to put that image right up on the website. There's a little bit of editing to do. Cropping an image to whatever your specs are would be great. Also, you know, anything you want to take out, you know, when you want to take out Mary's ex-boyfriend out of an image, you know, whatever this happens to be. And you also, this is the big thing, is that these images come out of a camera, they're going to be labeled image 4035 and then on up. And biggest thing is just, you know, change that and actually put the file names that you can search for, because if you get a boatload of about 100 images that are all starting with IMG and a bunch of numbers, you're never going to find what you're looking for. So I always suggest, and you can do it in plain English in the sense that you don't have to put hyphens in there. You don't have to do lowercase, which used to be the style for images. You can just put spaces in as needed, capital, lowercase letters, whatever you want. Numbers are fine. I would hesitate going much past the underscore or hyphen as far as any of the symbols. Certainly don't want to put a backslash or a forward slash in there that denotes different things to different servers. But so those are the big three things to do. And let's just take a look at apps. I use Affinity products. And just to let you guys know, they are running a crazy good deal for the next month or so. It's a 90-day free trial on all their apps. These are single apps that are paid once. They were $50 each, and they're now 50% off, and you can get an app for 25 bucks. The Affinity Photo is kind of like a drop-in replacement for Photoshop. It doesn't do everything Photoshop does, but it does certainly more than most other things that I use. And I use all their products. I use the Affinity Photo, Designer, and Publisher, and they're replacements for Adobe Illustrator and Adobe InDesign. Not that I'm slagging on Photoshop, but it can get expensive if you're using those tools. That it's pretty pricey with the monthly payments. But this is a one-time payment, and if you could just pick up all three apps for $75, you'd be golden because they get free updates for life. These are great. So anyway, just they're there. You can take a look at them as needed, but I highly recommend looking at them. And so because of Photoshop, which is the big boys in the town as far as using Photoshop, and if you're currently using Photoshop, you know why you're using Photoshop, and it's usually because there's 20 years of muscle memory, and you can actually edit images without even looking at them at this point. You use it every daily, and you just don't want to change, and they totally get that. Or Photoshop is getting paid out by a your business that you're working with, and they have an office license for it, or you have used it and you trade Photoshop files back and forth with other people in collaboration, which makes total sense. But for me, I don't use it that way. It's not my everyday 8-hour day job working in Adobe products. So I went with the Affinity Photo. I've been really happy with that. Also, there's GIMP, which is free. Can't say much more that, well, it's free. I mean, it works. It's kind of a Photoshop replacement. It's open source. Also want to say that there are really good photo apps, both on PC and Mac platform, and they have great tools. I know the one that I use, which occasionally this is the Photos app on a Mac and also on my iPhone. They have really good editing tools, non-destructive, and you can do a great job of editing the images there, whether you're cropping them, whether you're changing color tones, a few other things in there too. They're not going to be as big as you can get with Affinity Photo and Photoshop, but they certainly do a great job there. So these are the apps that, to take a look at for editing images. And then there's
Sorry, before you go on, Dean's got a question.
Okay.
Yeah, not so much a question, but I just want to give another endorsement for the Affinity products for price performance. They're, I don't know, 80 or 90% of the Adobe stuff.
Yep.
And the other one that I use, just because it's really simple, and I actually had it before Affinity, is Graphic Converter on the Mac.
I use it too. I use it for batch processing. It's just amazing. When I have about 30 or 40 images to run through a macro set, and just all of them come out the way they need to. Yes, it's a great tool. You can, right. That's a good one. Yep. But I like the Affinity stuff. They're really good.
There is an Irfan View. Doug, I don't know, you used it. It's very popular in Europe. Very light and very handy, and can do pretty much everything that others can do. It's been around for about 20 years now.
What's that? What's the name?
Irfan View. IRFAN.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's out of trying to remember. I think Bosnia or one of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Very popular across Europe.
Okay. Well, I know Affinity is a British company, and so that's their home base, and they do a lot of work over there too. But it's a very active community on it. But that sounds great. I'm going to say IRFANU. IRFANU. Okay.
IRFANVIEW.
Oh, BIEW. Okay, got it. Okay, great.
I've been using that for probably 25 years.
Wow.
For batch processing.
Yeah. Yes. when you need it, you got to have a batch processor.
And it's free.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. All right, so let me just jump into what's called some specialty editors, which are interesting.
Sorry, we got another.
Okay,
question.
back again.
Misty is asking, what was the app you said is good for batch processing photos?
Graphic Converter on the Mac was the one that Dean had mentioned, and I use it too. It's really great. It's a blend key software uses it, but it's all one word, Graphic Converter. It's available in the Mac store, and it will convert virtually any format into any other format too. Okay.
Okay, I think you're good to go on.
Okay, good. All right. So these are what I call some online specialty editors that do things that I haven't really seen. These are kind of one-trick ponies, but the trick is really, really good. I had a client, still have a client that is an interior designer. She had taken photos for her previous website from 15 years ago and put up before pictures. And of course, she doesn't have the originals. These are shot on a little Canon camera, I think, back in the day. But the images she had are like 250, 300 pixels wide. They were pretty good quality, but she didn't have any larger images. And they looked really ridiculous when we tried to enlarge them. They just didn't look that good to put up there. So found this, which is an amazing little tool, and Biggins images, they call it. The free version can go up to 4 times the size, does a great job of enlarging an image and without all the artifacts that go with that. And they have, if the paid tool is, you get a few more things involved, and you can actually make images 8 times the size of the original. So, have a 300 pixel wide image, you get 2400 wide pixel, image that looks really good. It was just shocking, and we actually can use it now on the site, and it really saved the bacon as far as making that process work. They also have the background eraser, which comes free if you pay for this. We actually paid, and then we said, okay, we're done with this. So we just paid for 1 month to use it and got out of it at that point. Removing backgrounds is always a fun thing to do. Take a picture of your friend and then, remove the background and put something else in the background behind them. This one is good, and this one is very good. They're both really good, and they have limitations on the free side as to how big the image can go when you upload and how big the image can be when you download it. When you pay for it, that kind of releases the size restrictions. And they both look really good. And one thing, if you are removing backgrounds, the big trick is to how well it does removing hair around a person's. And that is the real trick. And some of them work better than others. You just have to give it a try. But it's a great little tool for doing something. And it's just, again, does a one thing and one thing only. And I'll mention the fourth one, which is a GIF maker, which I was able to do. Had a GIF that when somebody wanted to put forth, I put together about 150 very similar images in ping files, stacked them in a row, and uploaded it, and it made a GIF for me, which is great. And you can do the same thing, upload a video and make a GIF out of it too. It's a cool free little tool to have. So I think this is probably it for this, but I'll just jump into what everybody wants to know: why optimize images. Well, because I think this is what they call settled law. Optimize your images, especially now. It wasn't as common to do this. Back in the day, you just kind of dealt with what a WordPress sent to you. And I'm going to talk about this, as we said, why optimize images. And they say images contribute almost 50% of the size of a web page now. And so that means if you start optimizing images and reduce the size of some of those larger images that you have, that site's going to run faster, always. And that's the great thing about it. The price is generally free. How you can reduce these. And I'm going to show a little quick thing here. I ran 2 things with WordPress at 82% quality, and short pixel in their what they call lossy format. So this is a performance page. This is just 2 images and about 4 paragraphs of text. So it's not very big or that interesting at all anyway. But looking at the timings area, which is actually the real true test to see how fast that page loads. And this is always looking at what they call the page above the fold. And it's some kind of metric. RUM stands for not the delicious thing that we drink, but it stands for real user metric. And it's a kind of a visual thing. If the image starts to show text and things like that at about a certain 50%, it's considered to be visible within this parameter. So the WordPress one came in at, very fast still, 1400 milliseconds, 1.4 seconds, which is good. Ran it through, same thing, just changed the images to a short pixel, came out at 810 milliseconds. So they got 0.6 seconds faster. So that would be again, if you had a regular page that had these 2 images, that would make a significant difference. When you have these things up around 2 to 3 seconds total, that's really where the difference is. The difference here between 1.4 seconds and 8.8 seconds is people aren't going to really see that difference. They'll see it when there's actually more stuff on the page. But optimizing, aggressively will really change that. That's why the optimized images is for speed. So the big thing is trying to find that sweet spot between the image file size and the image quality. Everybody's going to have something different. File size is something we can all look at and say, yes, that's smaller, that's really small, that's not small enough. It's a number. Image quality is very subjective, and everybody's going to feel differently about how the image quality is. And so just to let you know what I did here is I took the image again. I changed the WordPress quality setting to 95 just to push it, okay, to see what it would do. And so it changed it to 95 and it made almost a 1900 kilobyte image. It's very large. Did also the WordPress compression at 50%, about halfway down the scale, and that was about 500 kilobytes. And just for grins, I stuck it at 5% quality and came out. It's a great size, 118 kilobytes, but it certainly doesn't look right. But it actually looks kind of cool when I think it looks, if you can see it on your side, it has this kind of pastel, it looks like it's been painted in with a watercolor at the back end. It's kind of neat. I'm actually going to take an image and crush it down to 2 or 3% and see what it actually can do at that point. But the idea here is that somewhere on this curve, and I know these numbers are not necessarily in a line all the way, there's 10, 10, 10, 10, and it gets 82. But you'll notice whenever you use the WordPress quality percent, it really changes drastically when you get up past 95 and 97. You can see the difference here is there's 2 percentage points, and you can see a huge difference in the file size. And if I had set this at 100 and ran that, this thing would be literally off the charts. So the idea of when they get us down to 90 and now down to 82, and you need to start looking in this kind of area about how far to compress. And this, again, is image quality is a subjective thing. But it's just stating that you can see the differences in the file size. And to be honest, this 50% compression doesn't look as good as this when you blow it up, but it still looks pretty good. And every time I've done a talk, I've always discovered something that I didn't expect. And this is my big takeaway that I took here. If you start with a really high quality image, you can compress it very heavier than you can with an image that has been stepped on in the process, like one from Pixabay. And it'll keep the quality of that image much better if you're starting with a really great image. So that meant that I could actually do it at 50% in WordPress, changing their quality setting. And this looks pretty good. And this obviously looks better, but what the heck, this is over 3 times the size. you know, which is not necessarily what you want. So we need to move on to the next page here. So what do you need to do for an image? This is before you upload an image to WordPress. Well, cropping an image is a good thing. And the idea with cropping is to find a consistent crop measurement, whether it's a 3x4, whether it's a 6x4, or even like a one of the video type formats is 16:9. The idea is to be consistent with it. Don't make images all different sizes as far as the crop goes. You need to fix the image. So if there's a problem with red eye, you need to fix that. If there's a telephone pole sticking out of the back of somebody's head, in the back, you need to remove that and things like this. And of course, name the image. Those are the only three things you really need to do before you upload. And I did this little landscape aspect ratio tool that I have, and I kind of settled on a 6x4 image for landscape, 6 parts wide, 4 parts tall. It could be a 3x2. This is a standard that used to come out of DSLR, older style cameras. This 4x3 is kind of the standard now for digital photography out of your phone. I see this size more often. And again, this size is 16:9, which is essentially the size of videos that nowadays can be fine too. But you can see the ratios that change, and this has much wider than taller, this size. And this one is still landscape, but it's pretty tall compared to the width also, the numbers on here. So I kind of settled on 6x4 for landscape images, and pretty much when I'm working with a client on things, I'm taking all the landscape images and I'm making them 6x4, making them a specific aspect ratio, because it's kind of like when you grid a website and the grids line up, you're not having 3 or 4 fonts on a page, which kind of disturbs. And if you have different, aspect ratio images, it can look kind of messy. Every now and then throw in something different, that's fine. But as a rule, you try to stick with one aspect ratio for your landscape. And the same thing applies to the aspect ratio of portrait images. I didn't like 4x6, or, it felt a little thin when I looked at it. I liked the 3x4 better because it was a little wider. And so I used this one for portrait, and I used this one for landscape. And of course, you can always throw in a square image. It always works. But the cool thing about using this and this is this. Here's a 6x4 image, and you can stack 2 portrait aspect ratio images right on top perfectly, and it'll still be a 6x4 side by side. So it's a nice metric that you can have here. So you can create 2 images side by side, and it still will be that 6x4 image, because this is a 3x4. And also, it works this way too. This is the portrait image, and here's 2 smaller 6x4 images, or in this case, 3x2 images stacked here. It makes a perfect bigger landscape aspect ratio. So these are things that can be done with these aspect ratios and the consistency of them. You think about, you have a little image block with 3 images around it. It still maintains that structure of the 6x4. Okay, so let me just jump into the next thing, and this is the topic of shouldn't you optimize before upload? You have somebody else?
Doug, I have a question.
Yes.
So, how do you crop to that ratio?
Well, when you're in a tool that crops, you'd have to sometimes do. Any editor will have cropping tools, and they'll have the ability to do a 6x4. They'll just lock that cropping tool in there, and you just move it around the image to get the part that you want. They may have a 3x4 also doing the same thing. So all the, Photoshop has it, obviously, and so does Affinity Photo. So does even on your iPhone. They can do all these kind of croppings that they have. Now, the phone, maybe it has to be manually done. I'm not 100% sure, but I know in the Photos app, You can actually designate, I want this to be a square image. I want this to be a 6x4 image, and to crop it. You just have to move the image within the cropping area and then just hit crop it.
Okay, I just haven't used that particular kind of cropping, so.
Yeah, well, you know, if you're consistent, I mean, the camera, you know, comes out. You know, sometimes I always take an image because there's something in that image that I don't need, I don't want to see. So you can take the same cropping size and make it smaller, so you can kind of move that portion of the image outside and it doesn't show up in the final image. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So the idea about optimizing images, back in the day, that we were always told to optimize your images before you upload. Size the image before you upload. All these things to do in your photo editor choice. And you hear, I know somebody mentioned Squoosh. This is a great online tool for optimizing and sizing an image. It's great looking and it really does a good job. I don't use it because, you know, I have my own photo app locally that I use for this kind of things. Short Pixel has bulk image compression, and so does Tiny PNG. They can, you know, you can dump a bunch of photos up there and just compress away at your heart's content. Now, here's the dirty secret. If you have an image that you've optimized and you said you've taken it to the high resolution, high quality, if you want to call it that, it's doing some work and it is doing some compression on that image. You upload it to the WordPress media editor, and then WordPress punches in 82% on all the thumbnails. So you get this doubled up of stepped on twice instead of being stepped on once. And I'll show you what happens. I did this and it just kind of came out amazing. I know that some people keep on talking about changing the settings in not the compression settings, but the image percent that WordPress should use. It is 82%. I see some people will put up to 100, and they do it because they don't want, you know, WordPress to touch their images. So here we go. In Infinity Photo, their high quality setting is 85 as a quality setting. And this image size, again, up here, it's this wide, very large. I was able to take it down to the 2470 kilobytes, which is, you know, about 60%. And I did it also, I resized the image with the same quality to 2560 because this is a thumbnail image now, and I'm going to see what the thumbnail images come out to be. And that came out to 1130. So what I'm looking for, this is before uploaded it. So what I did then was I took this image right here, uploaded it 4 times with 4 different quality settings in WordPress, the quality settings. I kept the default at 82. I did one at 45, you know, pretty small, which is, you know, not a great quality. I did one at 95, and then I did one at 100. And see what would happen. And you look at this bottom line here, the default came out pretty close, 978 to this. It's a little different, but for the people who decide they want WordPress to not touch their images, this is the size that happens when you put in 100%. It's 4 megabytes, it's 4,000 kilobytes. It's ridiculously large. And the 95 is also large. And the only reason I can think of is that these 2 percentages are fairly close, even though they're from 2 different, you know, 2 different companies, but it's not that far away. And if in a WordPress at 45%, the image was small, as you would expect. So this is what happens when you get this 2-step process of getting compression before you upload and then getting this optimization in WordPress as you do it. And this came out pretty close, I thought. So I had a little graph. Here's the red line, which is this one here. And then these are the 4 image sizes that happen. And you can see how between 95 and 100 is a huge difference. And that's what you expect all the way. Anything up in the very high reaches just goes, you know, off the charts. So somebody who's thinking they're saving their image is actually making it 4 times bigger. with really no benefit. So I said, well, if we can do this, let's try a medium-sized quality image, which would be Affinity Photos at 45. I did the same process, the same image I started with.
Sorry, just to, before you go on with that, Doug Noyle's got a question.
Yes.
Doug, I think you're muted.
I'm now questioning what I thought I heard you say at the beginning. Did you not indicate that you like to upload 100% quality images and then let the image optimizer plugin take over?
Yes. And in other words, because when you export an image before, you know, I don't step on it. I put it up at 100% because it's adding sizes, but it's the thing that actually gets cleared out when you do a one-step compression. And what I'm talking about here is the compression that before you upload and showing how it doesn't match up. Now, you know, what I'm doing that with, Doug, is that I'm using Short Pixel, and I'll show you the settings that Short Pixel can actually do, even if taking a step. When I took that image, this image, big image here is 6.5 or 6.6 megabytes. When I bring it into Affinity Photo, and I say, let me just export this, I'm going to export it at 100%, same pixel width and height. The image comes out at 9.5 megabytes, which kind of shocked me, you know, but it does. But when I took that image, the 100%, and I took the one at 6.5 megabytes, you know, so they're almost 3 megabytes difference, and I ran them through Short Pixel, they both came out the same size because it was a one compression thing. And that's the thing that took away from me. So it didn't really matter what you were doing. I wasn't trying to match the size. You know, if I had taken the image and I wanted to make it the same size that it was originally, I would have to set it at like 97% or something like that. But since the result is the same, you know, running through Short Pixel, I just said, well, if I'm getting more in this image, I'm just going to put it at 100. So I don't, that's kind of what I was trying to allude to back then. And I'll show you that, you know, in the next part when we talk about don't optimize your images, you know, before you upload. I hope that makes sense.
So you're saving man hours on the front end is what you're doing.
Somewhat, but I'm actually doing better by not compressing it twice. You know, when we saw well, here, we'll take a look at this, okay? This is a medium quality image that I decided that, hey, let me go ahead and optimize this before I upload. The file size is down to, you know, just under 1 megabyte, the 225, 60 pixels down to about a half a megabyte. So when I did that same process, doing those 4 different image settings, image quality settings, you notice that this came out pretty tight. 45% came very close. But if I had kept the default 82, which is default, this is the size that WordPress makes it. It makes it bigger. This is after the fact. And most people use this. So if I was using my, you know, medium quality tool to optimize these images before I uploaded it, basically, I'm adding almost 300 kilobytes to the image size at 82%. And that to me was like, whoa, this, you know, to me, what happens when I look at this, I said, this process is broken because you don't know what you're getting when you get to the end. And obviously the 100% is much bigger, and this is, you know, big also. So what you see is that here's your baseline 447, and the only one that works is the one that's down to 45%. There's some kind of follow along that these have, it seems. They're not exact and probably will never be, but the idea is that if you optimize the image through your photo editor at a percentage, you probably want to change that you know, image quality size the same way in WordPress, and that's just unworkable. You know, going back and forth depending upon what your quality setting is in Affinity Photo. So it kind of led me to say, heck with this. This is just nuts. I don't know what I'm getting. As you can see, at the default, you're getting 300 kilobytes of extra stuff that you shouldn't need. It should be this, right? If I'm not doing any compression, people say, well, you can do nothing, no compression with that. You can do no quality change, put it at 100, because that means that there's no quality difference. And look what happens. It's over 2.5 megabytes. And, I looked at this and I looked at the numbers and I was going, wow, that's kind of nuts. But that's kind of what happens when you try to two-step a compression process like this. So my only reach out of this thing was just don't optimize before upload. And these are I'm using now Short Pixel, Tiny PNG, Imagify, and EWW Image Optimizer to go through the process.
Mike Noter's got his hand raised.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit lost, and I want to follow up on Doug's earlier. You load you're loading up a 6 megabyte photo, and I thought I had problems. Anything over 2 megabytes, I had a hard time loading that up to WordPress.
No, you can load up any size image. That depends on what your host goes. Some hosts say they're going to cap you at 10 megabytes, or some of you say no, just give me 50 megabytes worth of upload. You can upload huge images.
Okay, so what you're, just to follow up, and I think you made this clear. I just want to. So you're going ahead and keep it as big as file as it is. You go ahead and load it up, and then your plugins are taking care of this compression.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
One compression.
Right.
Not 2 or 3 that you don't know about. So again, the process here, and I'm just going to represent Short Pixel because I use this the most. It also handles WebP, as does Imagify, as does EWW. I think that's what you call it. But Tiny PNG only handles JPEG and PNG files. So Short Pixel requires an account, as do all 4 of these, with the server that's out on the other end doing the actual compression. And you set the Short Pixel setup to be a certain thing. I want lossy or I want glossy. Those are the 2 kind of image settings that you have for compressing that image. Those are the only 2 things that you get. And then you have a checkbox to turn on WebP if you want. So the process is, if I take that image that was, as you said, like 6.5 megabytes, and I saved it out at 100%, and it showed up now as 9.3 megabytes, I go, yeah, okay, fine. I upload that image only. And of course, the original image does not get touched. It actually shows up as 9.5 megabytes, okay? All the thumbnails that are generated from that image are getting quality changed at 82%. And Short Pixel doesn't get in the way of that. It just lets WordPress be WordPress, which makes total sense. But in the meantime that this is taking place, the image, the full size image, that 9.5 image that may be there, gets uploaded to Short Pixel's servers, where they do the compression settings based on how you set the actual plugin to what you want. And they know what the actual file sizes, the thumbnail sizes are supposed to be. And when they're done, it can take a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes sometimes. Once they're done with those images, they bring it back to your server. And what they do is the big thing, they then overwrite the WordPress optimized images. So WordPress is then out of this picture about doing their optimization. And this is a one-time compression. When you think about it, the trick is that Short Pixel, Imagify, and EWW are overwriting the original WordPress images and not touching the original size image. And that's the trick. Just a little caveat, just to let you know, Short Pixel, the only thing that I have an issue with, it will actually overwrite that original image with their compressed version of that image, which I don't agree with, but it's something that I don't really use. One thing you get with all of these is the ability to save the original images in a separate folder. You get to say, I want to save these images in this different folder. And I always do that with Short Pixel and Imagify. don't know specifically about EWW or tiny PNG. But again, the trick here is just one compression. And I usually use short pixel with the lossy compression, which is the more aggressive one. And if I'm looking at the image and I see it, I go like, you know, I think I pushed this thing too far. I can go back into the media library and say, instead of the lossy compression, just change it to the glossy compression. And so one button click and it'll go out to the server, do its job, and come back and resize, not resize, but make the image a little larger with less compression. That's a cool thing to be able to do. Imagify does that also. So you can jump between compression settings. When you look at the image, you go, yeah, that's too far. Or, you know, if you're a photographer and you say, you know, I want to go with the quality. So I'm just going to use the glossy setting that comes with short pixel. They also have what's called a lossless compression setting, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's designed for technical documents only and not for images. But I'm going to show you some of the numbers that I came up with for these compressors. And I also included Smush in here and the WordPress.
Before you go on, we've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
First, Doug Noyle, do you still have your hand raised from before, or do you have a new question? Okay. Next, Laura has a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I wanted to know if you restore the original images on Short Pixel, you know how you can do that?
Yes.
If you change your mind, or well, then does it regenerate all the thumbs? Do you know, or do you have to do that?
I think. That's a good question. I don't usually do that. I know you can. I think if you restore the thumbs, it doesn't go back to the WordPress settings. But I never use that option. I just usually change it. I say, you know, if it's glossy and I think it's too much, I'll go to glossy. If it's, you know, those are the only two settings I change.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question though, but I never tried that. So I'll show you the.
Sorry, we got another question from Stephen. He asks, does WordPress also optimize the images generated by theme, WooCommerce, etc.?
Yes, WooCommerce adds images to and they register those images. There's I think about 3 or 4 images that WooCommerce adds. Those are considered thumbnails, and they're the ones that get that 82% quality change on them. That's correct. In fact, all images, you know, even a theme or any other plugin that adds images and are registered, they'll also, because they're all considered thumbnail images, not the size of the original image. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, maybe you could clarify, but I think images that you upload through the theme or WooCommerce, that those are being optimized, but any files that are part of the theme or plugin would not be touched by WordPress.
You're talking about image files? So
yeah, like images that are just part of the theme that come packaged with it.
Oh, come packaged,
would not be up.
Right, because they've already done their thing and they're already in their own special little place. They usually don't show up in the media library. If it does show up in the media library, my thought is that they're probably getting through the 82% also. That's my guess. I don't really know. I do see themes and plugins have a couple of images that they, you know, keep in there. I know that the which theme, I think it was either the 2020 or 2019 has some images up there too. When you just installed it, a couple of images already automatically showed up. They were not technically, you know, photograph images. They were graphic images, so they were very small, so I couldn't really tell. But I think anything that gets into the media library gets that quality change. Okay. So let me show what the sizes were when I ran this for this.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
So first, Laura, did you still have your hand up from before, or did you have a new question?
No, I don't have a question. I'll remove it.
Okay. So Misty has a question. Which do you prefer? You said you don't really use Short Pixel.
I use short pixel, or I use a short adaptive image, short pixel adaptive image. You don't use both. They're two different products in the way they work, but they're both short pixel products. So it just depends if I want to have the images up on a CDN and lazy loading, and you know, if it's a worldwide, you know, if it's a website that is handled around the world, when you have all these images and they're on CDNs, it works much better. Takes some load off your server also, which is always a good thing. But they're two different things. And the next part will be about those other type of things. Okay.
Okay, I think we're good to go on.
Okay. So this is the technical details, and over here, I'll look at this. So the short pixel lossy was the winner as far as size goes. It took that scaled image that's 2560 pixels wide and took it down to 295. The interesting thing is that the second best was the short pixel glossy, you know, which was smaller than all the others, tiny PNG, Imagify aggressive, and even Imagify ultra. These are the two. Ultra is the really aggressive one, and the aggressive one is in the middle, kind of odd. This is the EWW, and the reason Smush isn't in here is because they just left the scaled image alone, which I didn't make any sense. You know, in other words, they let WordPress handle it. This size would have been 977 pixels, which is standard WordPress down here. I didn't include it in the graph because it would have shot up here for no extra value. And I just want you to see the scaled images are in blue, the green images are the large size, and the small ones, the medium size here, are the small gray ones. But the one takeaway that you can look at is you can see the big difference in what's happening on the larger images. In the scaled images. On the large images, you still see some big differences. Short pixel still did the best in regard to file size, you know. But when it gets down to the medium, nobody really cares because you're only working with about maybe 5 to 10, you know, kilobytes, which is nothing. Where you really want to see the compression work is up at the large images. And I think that's why Short Pixel scales their compressor to work harder on the large images, because those are the ones that actually take up the most space. I mean, a big difference between Short Pixel Lossy and Tiny PNG is 300. It's like half the size, you know, for the same size image. So I didn't have much fun using Smush, and I actually used WordPress at 50 to see what it would do, and it does these. I don't find that WordPress works as well when you get down around 50 and lower, where, you know, as far as compressing images, or as they say, changing the quality of them. But this is the numbers that I came up with, and to be honest with you, when I take a look at this image over here, because it has not been stepped on yet, it only got stepped on once, you can compress these type of images harder than you would normally, like if you took an image from Unsplash or Pixabay, which they've already been pre-compressed a little bit. Those will start to show more artifacts, you know, when you get down sometimes into the, you know, the lossy format, which is sometimes why I just bump those up to glossy. That's been my experience. You know, the better the image, the more you can compress it, so to speak, without any loss. So I'm going to jump in the next section. Would that be okay, or?
I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so now we're talking about adaptive images, and this is where we're talking about having the server, somebody else's server, distribute the images. And I always love reading this sentence because it really describes what happens with adaptive images. So I'm just going to read it. Adaptive images detects your visitor's screen size and automatically creates, caches, and delivers device-appropriate, rescaled versions of your web page's embedded HTML images. So they're doing all the work here. You can upload whatever you want. You know, you can just use the WordPress upload because that image is going to their servers, and instead of coming back and overriding words, they're just staying on the servers and they're distributing it through the content delivery network and lazy loading and all the good things that they have. The interesting thing here is that, you know, Jetpack, or not Jetpack, but yeah, actually Jetpack, formerly Photon, the tool that they use, has been doing this for over 10 years. They got some of the best CDNs out there. And so they have Site Accelerator. Now, from what I see, there is a free version of Jetpack that can be used, and that comes with Site Accelerator that goes across all their different pricing points for Jetpack. I wouldn't necessarily install Jetpack just for that, but it's just something that, you know, WordPress family has been doing for ages, over 10 years now, I think. So I've been actually using the Short Pixel adaptive images, which is the ancillary does the adaptive images. So essentially it goes up to the Short Pixel servers, and they distribute it out to their CDNs, and they provide lazy loading, and they also provide WebP if you have checked the box in Short Pixel adaptive images. Same thing with the image optimizer, EWW. It's called EasyIO. Same thing. They provide that same service. I'll tell you, the one that I really liked and really surprised me was this Optimal, or Optimole. I'm not really sure how you pronounce it, but they're doing the same thing too. The interesting thing is they're not doing anything on the WordPress site. They just go up to Optimal. This whole plugin just puts an API key in and goes to the Optimal servers, and it just handles it off to the server. So there's nothing that they can do to get those images back if you need to. They're strictly a adaptive image service. And the interesting thing is the pricing on this, and I'm checking it out. You know, I just stumbled on this literally a week ago. The pricing is that they'll give you their service for free for up to 5,000 visits per month, which sounds pretty good. And, you know, you might have some sites that could really fit under that price point. Next step up was, I think, $15 a month, and they give you a bunch more. They price by number of visits, you know, every time. And they're using quality. I think they use CloudFront, which is Amazon's CDN. This really looks good. One thing that Optimal does that I hadn't seen any of the others do was that they can detect a network slowdown for a particular device, and they will send them a smaller image, not to load their network down. So if there's somebody's on a 3G network on a small phone, they're not going to try to push over a larger image just because they can. You know, they're just going to make sure that that gets a smaller image than normal. They usually, when they push these up, they keep these in cache for about 30 days, I think. And so the first person that goes to a page is going to wait for these images to be actually created and cached, and then they'll see it. The second person who goes to the page is going to see all the beautiful stuff just pop right in. And that's kind of the way caching works for, you know, anything that you have on a website. The interesting thing is that one of the things that I like about this is that if you have a content area that's supposed to serve an image that's, say, that's 513 pixels wide, they're going to give you that image exactly. They're not going to take an image that's close by and try to squeeze it in. They're going to give you that exact image for that actual container. And that's what they call serving, you know, rescaled versions of your website, no matter what it is. You know, a lot of times you're not going to have you know, all the image sizes that you need when you want to put that website together, but they're going to deliver it to the actual bucket, and they're going to deliver the 2 times images, so to speak. You know, the one that they know what the device is that you're running, and they're going to deliver the image that's twice the size, you know, the next step up. Really interesting process. And again, they have their own console. You put the plugin in and you just run the API key and just watch it go. I still have a ticket in for one thing. They did take one of my portrait style images, you know, the taller than the wider, and they decided to put it this way. and I'm sending up an image of it because I think the image originally was this way on the camera, and I turned it, and for some reason it sticks with their service, but not others. It's kind of an interesting thing. The other one that I put in here is Cloudinary. It's more of an enterprise or a large company space because they do a lot of the same. They do the same thing, the dynamic images, but they also handle video management. It's like a management company for all your assets that you can have. Prices are more, but it's also a very, very good product for that. These are pretty cool systems here. So, and I only got 2 things left, and they're real simple lists. And I can show some of these things. Any questions about this? Only just one more thing about this. I wouldn't necessarily think this is a great idea if you're working with a local electrician in the Portland area and he wants a website. It doesn't matter the CDNs, it doesn't matter that he's getting delivered great images in Europe or anything like that. And that's where the short pixel image optimizer would work great, for that sort of thing. So these are things where we're really looking for a CDN also. Okay.
Doug Noyle's got a question, and just to let you know, we're at about 2 hours right now.
Ooh, okay. Ouch. All right. Sorry, everyone.
This is great info. I remember when the first time you did this presentation, so this is a beautiful follow-up, so thanks. I should have probably asked this in the previous section, but have you ever seen anything like Short Pixel or any of these have a faux pas in counting how many images they're optimizing for you? Because I've had that happen recently and I can't figure out why.
Well, there is a checkbox area to say that you don't want some images optimized. A lot of times I'll leave off the thumbnail image, the little tiny one, and sometimes they make a smaller thumbnail, and I just say, don't bother optimizing these because we're talking about 2 kilobytes, for optimization down at that small size. It's not worth it, and it doesn't count towards your setup. But I haven't. I purchased a couple of bulk products. I get about 17,000 images a month under one of them, and the other one I have still 10,000 images on a one-time purchase fee. So I got enough to last for years, which is good. So
this is a site that hasn't had any changes for months, and all of a sudden I get a notice saying I've maxed out my allotment and I have to wait for the next time period before I can optimize any images.
Before you can upload, well, Short Pixel charges per image, and that includes all the thumbnails, and they don't charge for the WebP images that you have. But if you have 10 images, each one of those is considered an image to be optimized.
But if I haven't uploaded any, they shouldn't have optimized any.
Well,
I was curious if you've seen any weirdness.
No, I haven't, but I mean, their pricing model is different than Imagify. Imagify based on sizes of image, the number of kilobytes you have that get pushed around on their servers, and Short Pixel charges per image. And so if you upload one image and you have 6 thumbnails, you're getting charged for 6 images. If that's kind of what you are seeing, I'm not really sure. But I haven't seen anything.
Actually, so I've uploaded images, say 5 months ago, and then haven't touched the site since. And it's a one-page site, not a lot of images. And I got that, and I thought that was kind of strange. I figured you would know if you'd seen any oddities, but I didn't find anything in my research. So
okay, yeah, I don't look at it that much because I have so much headroom on the images that I use. I don't pay attention to it, to be honest with you.
Gotcha.
But I found the Short Pixel adaptive images. I'm barely getting charged for this right now. As I said, I have 3 sites, 2 that are not that traffic heavily, one that's kind of moderate. So it's actually pretty good so far in that regard. but I'm interested in using optimal. You know, that's something I want to give it a shot. Okay. So let me just jump this. This is just a list of stuff that I've been using. Plugins helps the workflow, as they say. Managing images in the media library, highly recommend admin columns. You can actually put in fields that actually show the size of the scaled image, the actual dimensions of the scaled image. You can actually show the path of the image in the list view, and you can actually show the alt text to see if it's empty, which is really great to be able to look at a list and see all that kind of stuff. I tried, these are two media library features that they say. This thing is absolutely crazy. This media library assistant, it's like the, you know, the kitchen sink of what you want to do with the images in the back. I haven't even pieced it apart. This is very simple. It just creates virtual folders. So you can actually drop things into a virtual folder. If you're working on project basis, you can take 10, 20, 30, 40 images, put it in that virtual folder, putting them in another. It's a great way to just simply organize things by virtual folders, not physical folders. So if you disable the plugin, you're not going to get your, you know, you're not going to create any specific folders where you're going to get lost and not see the stuff. Enable Media Replace is a tool that I use regularly for replacing an image. If somebody sent me an image and I upload it and put it in, they look and say, oh, that's not the one I need, you this sized image. And you can take the image, replace the image, and the new image will show up wherever that image went. This is a plugin by the Short Pixel people, and it's really great. I use it a lot. And if you're changing your sizes of images, you know, at some point during your process, you can have this tool called Regenerate Thumbnails, which really works. If there's new thumbnails available and you want to change those images that didn't get that because they were older images up there, you can regenerate the thumbnails on an image by image basis or do it in a bulk way. The Safe SVG is the tool that I use to get SVGs up to the media library. It works great, it's free, and there's no need, I don't find any need for the paid version. Just a real quick, last one, I promise. I use code snippets a lot because I just get these code snippets that helps me modify certain things in the media library. Like when I was changing the quality percent in WordPress, there's a single line piece of code. I just go in there and change it to 100, change it to 95, change it to 45, whatever. And it just does that. It makes it very easy to get at. And Swift Control is a pretty cool plugin. They can show you that when they get to the front end of something. And I'm using the Astra theme in the Elementor page builder. So that is it. Jeez, 2 hours. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm going to hit the escape key to bounce out here. So one of the things, I think, Marianne, you asked about settings in Short Pixel. Is that something you wanted to see? Because I can just pop Short Pixel up and show you kind of what I'm doing with it.
You know, I would like it if you could just pop up Short Pixel and show me how you do your settings.
Okay, Firefox, here we go. Let me see. Oh, this is the Swift admin control. You notice I'm logged in, but I don't have any admin bar up here. So I get the full height. If I go here and I can make all these, I can go to the dashboard, edit the page, new page. I can go to the media library. I can go to my snippets, customizer, plugins, and just log out. So you can put the kind of things you want in here, and it always shows if you're logged in for admins or editors. Great little plugin. So I'm just going to go into plugins. So let's see, this is live here. See how things are holding up in the tubes here.
I'm sorry, what's that plugin called, Doug?
It's this one here. It's called Swift Control. I'm using the Pro version, which isn't that much. This is the guy that does Page Builder Framework, which is a really good theme for page builders. Very good. Anyway, that's it, Swift Control. There's a free version, which gives you an idea what it can do, and then I got the purchase version here. So here's Short Pixel Optimizer, okay? Now, this is a setting, just to show you things that I've done that are a little bit different in this. I'm gonna actually go to the media settings.
Sorry, I think Mike's got a question, Mike Noter.
Yes, okay.
You can finish your whatever you're, and I can follow up.
Okay. Okay. So this is one I set up. It's just a site called Images, and I'm in the media library. This is kind of how I deal with things. I don't think the 300 wide pixel image works anymore, so I just set the max width to be 400 and the height to be 0. So I say don't pay any attention to the height. I make the large size 1200, which is 3 steps up, so to speak, and then the max height 0. That's what I do in the media settings. Wouldn't suggest you just change horses in midstream on doing this, but you might want to take a look at
Now,
approach.
why do you do it that way? Why not just leave whatever is set in the theme?
Because I don't like those sizes. Here, okay. Let me go back to short pixel and I'll show you why, okay? And then I'll show you why. So I'm going to go back over to short pixel. And the settings that I use, I change this a lot. So I'm using glossy. Now that I have this large image, you know, we talked about that 2560 scaled image. I don't need to resize the large image anymore. I used to be able to set this and I would put a maximum size image that I wanted to see in the library. But I remove EXIF. This is just stuff that photographers like, you know, and I always keep this image backup on. It actually stores the images in a separate folder, the original images there, which I think is great. And it says apply compression also to the image thumbnails, which is obviously what you want. So I'm using glossy, but you could choose lossy either way. This is one I just kind of set up with that. So over on the advanced side, this is where you get the WebP images. It's off by default. And it says, do you want to create WebP versions? And for free, because they're not going to charge you for these images. So you say yes. Deliver WebP versions of the images in the front end. Yes, I want to do that. Using the picture tag syntax. Yes, you want to do that. And then say only via WordPress hooks like content and excerpt. And when I set that just like that, and then I actually upload an image, it'll create the WebP images in addition to the JPEG images. If I go back, I'm just opening up, and let's see, I'm in my FTP site here, okay? So I'm just trying to find an image that I actually did here, sorry. Here, I uploaded a big image, Bangkok feet, you know, and there's a WebP. And so it creates a WebP image for every size that I have in here. So it can serve. Now you can see the interesting thing is that Short Pixel says, hey, we can make this size 251. Here's the WebP image, it's 357, it's bigger. When you get down to the middle sizes, down around 700 or so, they start to coalesce and get a little bit of the same size. But I think, and I'm not really sure how they're, you know, operating with the WebP images and what they're doing with them size-wise. It's hard to really get a comparison because WebP doesn't really work. It's hard to open on your computer. I have to open it in Affinity Photo. You know, I don't have any easy way to manipulate and manage that sort of thing. But that's what this does. And you can see this is a ton of images that get loaded up. You know, so that's how that's one picture that I opened up, and that's how many images got, you know, created, thumbnails got created from it. But let me go back to Short Pixel here. So when I do this, it creates a WebP image, and then this WebP image will show up in Firefox or Chrome, but it won't show up in Safari, and then Safari will show the JPEG. I'm not using Cloudflare or any of the statistics, and that's basically all I do with this. And if you
can you go back and show me the, can you show me the first page? Yes. The first page of WebPixel, yeah. Again, in general?
Yeah. I used to always check this because I wanted a maximum size, you know, because I would upload pretty huge sizes. So I would cap it usually at 2400. But I'm perfectly fine using the WordPress new scaled image at 2560. So I leave this off and the scaled image handles that itself. So normally though, I do I check this box and put in the biggest image size that I want to see. But everything else is checked. I start.
You don't have to do. You don't check that box anymore, though.
Right, not now, because of the scaled image. Because that's the cap now, and I think it's a good cap. It's actually kind of interesting. It's the image size of a 5K iMac, the native one. So that's what they're doing. I said I'm good with that. But normally what I did is I capped this here and I would put in like 2400 or something like that in here. And I would just leave this alone. This, again, doesn't matter. And this is the box that I would tick. And the easiest thing to do, though, is to actually, when you've done one, just test an image and go into your FTP or your cPanel's file manager and take a look and see what they actually do. So two things here that I just would really like to show if I can, the snippets. So you saw that I had some images in the media library. I put a 400 in and a 1200 in. So I did this snippet here, which is adding additional image sizes and registering them. And so I'm going to embiggen this. And it looks like a lot, but it's actually pretty simple. So I'm adding additional image sizes. I'm adding that 300 back. I'm adding a 600, an 800, a 1600, a 2400 image. These are my settings. These are the images that I want. And then I'm registering these images with giving them a name down here. And I'm doing this because if I have a 400 image picture and I have a DPR2 display, it's going to want an 800 image because double that. So here it is. And if it wants a triple, a DPR3, well, I have that back there as a 1200 image. Same thing applies for anything. If I upload a 600, if I upload an 800 image picture, I have a double size of this, which comes up to 1600. So the idea is that there's exact doubles that I have and even triples, for DPR3 and DPR2 that become available. It's a lot more images, as you can see, but some plugins will upload a ton of images, and this is the one thing that I can control. Sometimes I just say I don't need the 75 pixel image. I don't need that here, so I can just blow that off. But these are the image sizes that I want to add to the media settings. So I have basically the 150 thumbnail. I got a 300. I have a 400. From the media settings, I got a 600, an 800, then I have a 1200, the large image from the media settings, and I got a 1600 and a 2400, all in increments that kind of double and triple up so that the scaled images are always correct when I do that. That's just, it's my brain, whatever it is. So that's a snippet, and I run this, change it, sometimes for other things. If I go back to snippets, there's another thing that you can do. Here's the way, change the JPEG image compression. This is what you do with WordPress. You come in here, one single line of code, JPEG quality, click here, change it to whatever you want. Do the wrong thing, put 100 in, change it to 55 or something like that and see what it does. That's the default. So with this, I don't need to run this because that's actually the default for WordPress. But this is where I go to change that if I want to, just for testing purposes. Also, because WordPress actually puts in a 768, it puts in a 1536, and it puts in a 2048 image, I don't want those. So I come in here and I remove those images. This is unsetting the image. Take the medium large, which is the 768, 1356. This is the way they're actually registered, and remove them from WordPress for actually creating thumbnails. And so that saves me that. I can change the maximum source set. This is a real specific thing. So these are all things like some people say, I want to change that big image size instead of 2560. I want to make it 3000. You can change it here. Somebody wants to remove it entirely. You can just put this on and there won't be any more scaled image. This literally came out the day that it was announced. Somebody hated the idea so much. I think it's great. So, but anyway, that is the image. So what I do with these is I keep a site running for about 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there. And if everything is settled, I'll actually take all these pieces of code that I have in here, and I'll wrap it up into a plugin and then put that over in the must-use plugin, which is out of the way from the plugins folder, and then delete the snippets so that they're not there. And then you just run as a must-use plugin all the time, you know, because they don't really get changed. And that's kind of where I'm at there. And if I can show you, I showed you the short pixel thing. I want to show you one other quick thing. I'm going to go to a slightly different site. This is the same one. This is running all the WordPress stuff. And I'm going to show you this trick. Remember we talked about DPR1, DPR2, 3, 4. Well, Mozilla, this is Firefox. So if I go up to Firefox and go to Tools, down to Web Developer, many people have been here, but I go all the way down to Responsive Design Mode. Select that. What I have now is choices for actual sizes of devices. Right now, I'm looking at an iPad Pro 12.9 inch, and it's telling me it's a DPR2. So this is a Retina display. If I go to, here's my phone, iPhone XS Max, you'll notice that this is a DPR3. And here's the reason why I hate the 300 wide image. This one is using the WordPress default image sizes. When you put a 300 size in here, you know, and wrap a text around it, this is what happens when you get a 414 wide image. I mean, excuse me, wide image device. It picks up the one word up here and takes the long word and shoves it underneath. It kind of looks ridiculous, I think. So I never liked the 300 size in general, so I make it 400, and it easily fits within the 414 width of this device setting. And you know, you can see actually if I go to the Galaxy, you know, it's 360, but this is actually a DPR4, which is kind of nuts when you think about it. This, remember, was a 300 size image, right? So if I go to Save Image, it's actually showing me at 1536 because it wants an image that's at least 4 times the size of the 300 image because it's a 4 DPI, 4 pixels per 1 pixel. If I take this back and if I go to my phone, which is a DPR3, still pretty much the same size here. It may be close to the same size, I'm not sure. It's 1024 by 1024. This is the process that you know, determines what size image gets displayed based on these pixel sizes. So it's a really good tool to actually try to figure out what's happening with your images.
Can you grab one of the smaller ones on that list, like say a Pixel 2, to see what it
Yes,
shows?
it's going to go there. So here I'll show you, here's a laptop that's 1020, and this is a DPR1. You know, this is like a 1280, this is like an old school laptop. If I save this image, it's 300 by 300, which is the default size. I'm going to go to a high-res laptop, high DPI. It's a DPR2. This is a 1440. It's like one more recent, Retina display. Save image, 768. Now these are the WordPress images, so it's looking for an image that is at least twice the size, and the next one it can see is the 768. So that's what the DP2. And again, you know, you can do all these sizes. This one I found to be a very tool. It's considered to be experimental, but the idea is that this really gives you an idea of what's happening with your images. You can see why you need bigger images to start. So you have a big image to start, even if you're only using the 300 size image for that particular bucket, so to speak, you're going to need 2 times, maybe 3 times, and rarely you're going to need a 4 times image for people on mobile, because it just expects those bigger images. And that's also why I use Short Pixel, because it crushes the larger images a little harder. Now, I mean, these images I think look great. I know you're not really seeing them because you're going through the internet, but I did put some of the images up on my website. You know, if you look at the slide deck, if you go to my site /images at the end, you'll actually see some of the images. You can download them, and I have the code snippets that I'm using currently there too. But that's kind of the process that I've been taking about images, just trying to make them as active as possible. I'm trying to make the buckets work for me, as opposed, I don't want to, you know, 768 image is too big to fit there, but that's the next best size that WordPress offers. That's why I'm doing the 300, 400, 600, 800, 1200, 1600, 2400, because there's always an even image size in that process. I don't think that makes sense. So just real quick here. So here's a medium large image, 768. Save the image size. Oh, not this one, sorry. I have to go to the other side. My bad. Let me get to this is a different site. It looks kind of the same because they just kind of whacked it together. So if I scroll down here in this 600 wide image, you notice this is a WebP image, right? And you can see it's WebP because I actually made a WebP version. I'm in Firefox, which uses this image. So it's going to give me the WebP image. And Short Pixel is running on this. So if I take this here and I go over to Safari, which is, you know, doesn't, I'm going to paste it in. And let me scroll down here to that same image. I'm in Safari now, and I'm going to save the image to see what it is. You can see it's a JPEG because Safari doesn't support WebP. So there is that intelligence about it. You know, as I said, Chrome will support the WebP, Firefox, and even Edge, you know, on Microsoft's platform. So that's one of the benefits. Maybe Google likes it better. I don't know. But we shall see. But that's what I've been experimenting with on here. So all those code snippets that I added are up there on my site. You know, you can go fish them out. I actually put the big image of this up there. You can play with it, try it out, put it on there, sell it if you want to. It's fine by me. But it's a great image for testing. And as I said, you can really take this image and crush the daylights out of it. These are crushed, and they look really good. Start with a great image. Okay, that's the whole thing I would say. Okay, I think that was all. Somebody else want to see something? You know, on the.
So, okay, we've got a whole bunch of questions. So, Mike, you've been waiting a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your time and all the information. Very much appreciate it. I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. This may be a little bit off your area, but at the end of your add-ons, at the end, you had Elementor and an Astra theme. I use them both, but the Elementor theme really loads up code on the mobile, and I'm thinking about going straight to Gutenberg. And with the new releases now, I'm looking at Gutenberg, they're offering an awful lot. And with these plugins and add-ons that come on, there's a lot of power. A lot of that is helping with images. And so I'm going to ask you is, what do you think in the future here is Gutenberg and WordPress, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, what do you think that's going to be in the WordPress core here in the next year or so, if you understand my question?
Yeah, it's like whether to go with a page builder or just to go with Gutenberg.
I think I'm going away from page builders to Gutenberg because I know they'll have, but on this image stuff, I expect a lot of that's going to show up with Gutenberg too.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Gutenberg, because it's WordPress, it's going to put in whatever images that you register, whatever sizes, and they're not going to be different in that regard. But thinking about Gutenberg a lot. I've been doing blog posts with Gutenberg for people. I think it works great for blog posts. I still have problems getting it to do what I want it to do for building out pages that have some more intricate things in them. And I don't know if that'll ever get to where I want it to be, but at least get to it soon. But I totally hear you and understand. I've been using Gutenberg, and I think some of the new devices that are coming out, Cadence blocks, are really good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yep. And the other one that I really think is great is by the people that Generate Press, which has a very good theme. Tom, the developer there, has also released Gutenberg, or I think what do you call it, Generate Blocks. Looks tremendous. It's in just going into beta now, and you can actually go to the site. It's that same kind of thing. They're actually, these people know, what page builders can do. And I think the Gutenberg started, they didn't really have an idea, in place. So having sections, having rows that you can manage, both the Cadence Blocks does that, and the Generate Blocks, I think it's called, is doing that now too. And I think that's really kind of a game changer for Gutenberg.
Yeah, I think it's eventually going to get there. I'm just worried about the image plugins that are going to end up
You're
being
talking about the compression plugins, or?
No, when you say optimize, you basically mean sizing and compression, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the sizing isn't something that is done by the plugin. The sizing is they're just paying attention to what the registered sizes are. It's the compression within those sizes that they work in. And to be honest with you, there's no reason why Short Pixel or any of them can't work with Gutenberg.
Oh, yeah, and I think they kind of do. But it just seems with this latest update, they're starting to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And these, they keep adding complexity into these page builders, and
Yes.
I'm worried what's going to be in a few years, especially on the mobile load times and stuff.
Yeah.
And images are such a big part of that.
Right. Well, I agree. That's why I work hard getting the images down to a reasonable size, and still making them look good, because that's always part of it. But there is layers of things that go on in Elementor, any of the page builders really. Gutenberg is built a little differently. It's much lighter weight, but still I run into issues where it just doesn't do things that I want it to do. And so that's why I'm still in page builder land.
Yeah. Well, I can appreciate all the information. You're a wealth of information, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think that's all I got. If there's any other questions.
Yeah, we've got a few more.
Okay.
Dean, you're next.
Yeah, quick question again. Thank you, Doug. This is the 2.5 hours now went by just so quickly. It's so much good stuff. Can you just clarify for me though? I saw the snippet where you were adding in additional image sizes.
Yes.
Do we have to do anything to compensate for that with the source set parameter? Or is that automatically put together?
It's automatic. Yeah, the source set will actually figure out what the registered images are on your site, and they'll provide those images. Like if let's see, which one am I in? Where am I, as they say? Let me just go grab the 600 image, and I'll do a spec element, and let's see what the source size says. So this image here is the source set. Somewhere in here it's going to say source set. There it is, SRC So it describes all the images. This is you can see a lot of them in here. 2400 by 1600. 1600 by 1020, 2020. That's the folder. But all of them are in here, and so that's just source set. It's what it does. It looks at the registered images that are an actual image there. Then we're going to provide it to who needs it.
Thanks, Dave.
And you can see. Remember, we talked about the picture class when it gets wrapped around the WebP, and this is the thing. You've got 3 choices here. Here's the picture class. Here's the WebP, which I'm in Safari, and it's going to basically ignore this because it can't deal with the WebP at this point. And it then comes down to here and say, can we deal with this? And they say, yeah, we can. We can deal with this here. This one always shows up the full image. I don't know, this shows up something else. But this describes one of these two, whether it's going to be the JPEG or the WebP. That's kind of how I look at it. So, can you see? I don't know, it's kind of small. Maybe not see it, but.
Okay, are we good for the next one?
Okay.
Okay, so Katie H asks, what tool are you using to check the DPR of the different screens?
It's the Firefox web browser. And as I said, I haven't seen that before. I just stumbled on it. So if I go, let's go back here. It shows like this. I'm just going to take it away. Let me just move my image out so I can click the X and make it disappear. Like, you know, just take this out. So you're in Firefox or Firefox developer version, either one. Let me go to GB images, which is a little easier to deal with. So all you do is in Firefox or Firefox developer, go to the tools menu, down to web developer. I'm sure if you're looking at things, you've been in the inspector and the network and various other things. You scroll down and see responsive design mode. That's where you get this. And then you can make selections about which ones you want. You can go into edit the list. So you can uncheck things that you don't care about. You can add others. You can see what it looks like on a TV. They have all these check boxes that you can do. And I don't know, you can add a custom device. I did not know. So you figure it out. You can add a custom device and tell it which device pixel ratio it is. That's kind of cool. And so I checked a bunch of them just to see what it does. I don't see the Surface in here, but I may be wrong. Microsoft, well, there's a Windows phone, yeah, I would thought there would have been a Surface in here. I think it's a DPR2. I don't really know. But again, this is kind of what they call an experimental. They would like to be able to see these things listed in the headers of all, you know, in the HTML headers to see if they can actually define this as, you know, what DPR are you? So again, going in here to see this image, and this one works fine. It's 375 pixels. It's a DPR2. So it just basically says that this is a Retina display, which is a 2x. As I said, my iPhone is a 3x. So it wants 3x the size of the standard image. And you should give it to them. So one of the things that people had said, I think I mentioned this, is that when you add an image specifically for a size, like you have a 450 wide pixel box that you need a 450 wide pixel image in there. So you upload an image that's 450 pixels wide. And you say, that's great, but that's only going to look good on a DPR1. Because that's the biggest image that you have. And so what happens when you go to a DPR2? Well, it takes that 450 pixel wide image, tries to stretch it up into 900 pixels wide, doubling the image, and you're just going to get that fuzz. So that's why I always try to upload a big image so that I have image sizes above the one that I actually need. If that makes sense. And so the idea of just make an image specifically for the size of the container just doesn't fly anymore. Most of these things are, you know, DPR2s. When you think about it, DPR1s are just disappearing. You know, they'll be gone. I mean, everyone here is a DPR2 or more, with the exception of this one, this old laptop, which is, you know, 10 years old. So when you think about that. So anything else we got, Doug, or?
I think I'm the last one with my hand up.
Sorry, I didn't have my unmuted. Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Okay.
So mine's not so much a question, but kind of you know, a thanks and comment. That was fantastic. So thanks, Doug. That was one of the most comprehensive, I think, presentations I've seen on.
Yeah, it was certainly long enough, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Just the coverage and everything was really good. You know, I run a hosting company actually, and we, several years ago, we built in an image optimization tool into our dashboard and our interface. But it's been a few years and it's due for kind of a refresh.
Yeah,
and so all the content you went over tonight was excellent and really good for me to see kind of before I revisit that. So thanks again.
So just to be, I have, in the bottom of the screen share, just the page that I was working on. You can download the deck here. This is on.
Oh yeah, I already pulled it up.
So code snippets, but read some of these. They're very, I try to pull articles that are, not necessarily controversial, but, myth of DPI and the 72 pixel web resolution myth. And some of these are very good, and they talk about aspect ratios, and a lot of the things that I picked up, I got from these articles. So anyway, you can take a look at them, and I take no responsibility if you do a code snippet and something breaks. Okay, just put that out there right now.
Well, we don't run through WordPress anyway, so we
okay.
code snippet. So
yeah. Okay, great. All right.